So imagine for a moment that it is 1974. Just close your eyes and picture it for a second.
Okay, 1974.
I'm there.
You are standing in the arrival hall of an airport in Bombay. The air is, it's thick, it's humid, and there's this distinct tension in the room.
Right.
You're an entrepreneur, a visionary, maybe even a little bit of a risk taker. And you have built a product that you know could sell in London or New York. But there's a massive problem.
A $50 problem, if I'm guessing where this is going.
Exactly. You have exactly $50 in your pocket. Money a relative gave you for a tassie and a sandwich when you land.
$50. I mean, in 2024, that's barely a decent lunch for two people. But in 1974, that $50 bill in your pocket is basically a ticking time bomb.
It really is. If the customs officer finds that $50 bill, you aren't just getting a fine. You aren't just getting a slap on the wrist.
No, you're a criminal.
You are a criminal. You are looking at potential jail time. You are treated with the exact same severity as a smuggler of gold or contraband. It sounds like a dystopian novel when you say it out loud, doesn't it? Like something out of 1984.
Yeah.
But that was the lived reality. We existed in an economic ecosystem where the government didn't just govern it suffocated. It decided what a company could produce, who it could sell to, and most importantly, it treated foreign currency not as a tool for trade, but as a dangerous substance.
Like a narcotic almost.
Exactly like a narcotic that had to be hoarded,
Right.
rationed, and heavily policed.
And then you snap back to today. I open an app on my phone. I buy a stock listed on the NASDAQ. I order a book from a warehouse in the UK. And I watch Indian startups raising billions of dollars from global venture capitalists.
The contrast is just staggering.
The transformation is so absolute that it's almost hard to believe the before picture ever actually existed. But here is the multi-trillion-dollar question we're tackling today. How exactly did we pull off this escape act?
That is the question. How do we go from an economy that literally jailed you for holding dollars to one that is chasing a $5 trillion target, completely integrated with the global market? And perhaps the pricklier question, why do so many economists, including the ones we are reading today, insist that the job is only half done?
That is the journey we are taking today. It is not just a story of changing laws. It's really a story of rewriting the national psychology. We went from fearing the world to negotiating with it.
And honestly, it's a story about survival.
Absolutely. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and as always, my job is to take a stack of dense academic, sometimes dry source material, and just squeeze it until we get the absolute gold nuggets of insight.
And today is a special one.
It is. We aren't just giving headlines today. We are dissecting the Indian economy's nervous system. We are breaking down Chapter 25 of Sanjeev Verma's book, Trade Reforms and Foreign Exchange Management, and we are layering that with the conceptual precision of Vivek Singh's writings.
I am ready for this. This is one of those topics that feels super technical. I mean, it's full of acronyms like FERA, FEMA, LERMs, really carvy. But once you peel back the jargon, it's actually a really dramatic story.
It's about trust, control, and money. So our mission today is to decode the shift from a closed economy to an open one. We're going to talk about the death of the draconian FERA and the birth of FEMA. We're going to solve the mystery of how exchange rates are actually determined.
Because, spoiler alert, it's not just supply and demand.
Right, not at all. And we are going to tackle this heavy, often misunderstood concept called convertibility.
Which is really the engine room of the whole system. If you understand convertibility, you understand exactly how India connects to the rest of the world.
Exactly. Now, before we jump into our time machine back to the crisis of 1991, we have some critical housekeeping. Because this deep dive is custom engineered for the Simplified UPSC by PPP Community.
A fantastic community. You guys are the reason we do this deep research in the first place.
Truly. It's a community that really values depth over breadth, which makes this long-form format perfect. We know you aren't here for sound bites. You're here for deep conceptual understanding.
You're here to clear the concepts for the exam and beyond.
Absolutely. So here is the deal. If you are listening to this on YouTube, please, humbly, we ask you to hit that subscribe button. It's a tiny click for you, but it massively helps our retention metrics.
It expands our reach.
It tells the algorithm that you want more high-density content like this. And if you are capable, and only if you are capable, supporting us on Patreon is what keeps the lights on and the research team fed.
And a massive, massive shout out and thank you to all the supporters currently on Patreon. This level of analysis takes days of preparation, and you literally make it possible for us to keep bringing this super useful content to you.
Yes, thank you. Also engage with us. Like the video, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. It really feeds the algorithm gods. And for the serious students among you, the ones who are tracking this for UPSC or professional development, we have free notes and practice previous year questions or PYQs available on the public Telegram channel.
Just DM to join that.
Yep, just send a DM. And for the completionists who want the full library, meaning access to every single video in the series at once, the organized premium notes, the model mains answers there, is the private Telegram library.
It's essentially a revision goldmine. The premium notes have detailed breakdowns, extra PYQs, and those model mains answers, which are crucial.
Okay, housekeeping complete. Let's map this out. We have a clear roadmap for this session. We are going to start with the shock, the 1991 trade reforms.
A paradigm shift.
Right. Then we move to the law, the shift from FERA to FEMA. Then we get into the mechanics, the balance of payments, convertibility, the nuances of exchange rates, and finally, how Indian companies borrow money globally through things like external commercial borrowings and Masala bonds.
It's a very logical flow.
Yeah.
You can't understand the borrowing if you don't understand the law, and you can't understand the law if you don't understand the crisis that spawned it.
So let's do it. Take us back. Set the scene. It's pre-1991. What was the economic vibe of India?
The vibe was very much Fortress India. You have to understand the historical trauma here to get why the policies were what they were.
The colonial hangover.
Yes. The East India Company came to India as a trader in the 1600s and ended up as a ruler. That memory was burned into the DNA of independent India's policymakers. They looked at foreign trade and foreign money not as an opportunity, but as a potential Trojan horse.
So the economic philosophy was just extreme self-reliance. Shut the doors.
Precisely. The technical term is import substitution. The idea was, instead of buying a good from abroad, we will force domestic companies to make it. Even if they're wildly inefficient, even if it costs 3 times as much, and even if the quality is terrible.
The goal wasn't efficiency at all then?
Not at all. The goal was autonomy. We make everything ourselves so no one can ever hold us ransom again.
But to enforce that kind of economic isolation, you need an insane amount of control.
Total control. This gave birth to the infamous license Raj. The government didn't just regulate safety or taxes. They decided who could produce what and critically how much they could produce.
Wait, so if you were a car manufacturer and you wanted to expand your factory to make 10,000 more cars because people wanted them,
the government could just say no. In fact, they frequently did. People would wait 10 years for a Bajaj scooter because Bajaj wasn't legally allowed to produce more to meet the demand.
That seems completely insane by modern standards. Actively preventing a business from meeting consumer demand.
It was all about rationing resources.
Right.
They believed capital was scarce, so the planners had to allocate it. But the breaking point for this system wasn't philosophical. It was financial.
The balance of payments crisis of 1991.
Exactly. We didn't change because we suddenly wanted to embrace capitalism. We changed because we went broke. We simply ran out of dollars to pay for essential imports.
Primarily oil. Yeah.
Primarily oil, yes. We were weeks away from defaulting on our sovereign debt.
Which is unthinkable for a country of our size.
It was a nightmare scenario. Imagine the sheer humiliation of a nation the size of India having to physically airlift tons of gold to the Bank of England to secure an emergency loan just to keep the lights on.
That humiliation was the trigger.
That was the wake-up call. We had to integrate with the global economy to survive. And this is where Section 1 of Sanjeev Verma's Chapter 25 kicks in the trade reforms.
So the government has its back against the wall. They need to open up. What did they actually do? Did they just tear down all the trade walls overnight?
They dismantled them brick by brick, but they did it with surprising speed given how slow the bureaucracy usually was. The first massive change was the removal of quantitative restrictions, or QRs.
Let's unpack that term, quantitative restrictions. It sounds like bureaucratic jargon. What actually is a QR?
Okay, imagine you want to import luxury watches. Under a QR regime, the government doesn't just tax you. They say India will only import 5,000 watches this year, period.
So once the 5,000th watch crosses the border, the door shuts.
The door firmly shuts. It doesn't matter if you have the money. It doesn't matter if there's huge consumer demand. It is a hard, absolute physical quota.
It's a physical limit on trade. It's not about price at all. It's about volume.
Exactly. So the 1991 reform shifted this from limiting quantity to managing through tariffs. They basically said, okay, we aren't going to tell you how many watches you can bring in. Bring in 1 million if you want.
But you will pay a tax on every single one.
Correct.
Yeah.
So shifting from no, you can't to yes, you can, but it will cost you.
That makes sense. And speaking of cost, the second pillar of the trade reforms was a drastic reduction in those exact tariffs, right?
Huge reductions. We used to have some of the highest customs duties in the entire world. I mean, sometimes exceeding 100% or even 200%.
Wow.
Yeah, so you wanted to import a machine to make textiles? You might pay double its value just in tax to the government. They slashed these peak customs duties drastically.
And this wasn't just to let consumers buy nice foreign things.
No, not at all. It was to allow Indian industries to import raw materials and technology.
That's a key point, because if Indian companies can't import the best machines from Germany or Japan because the taxes are too high, they can't possibly produce world-class goods to sell globally.
Precisely. You cannot be an export powerhouse if your factories are running on obsolete machinery from the 1960s. So tariff reduction was actually pro-industry.
Right. And then came sectoral deregulation.
They effectively killed the license raj. The government stopped trying to micromanage production capacities. If you want to build a bigger factory, go ahead. The market will decide if you succeed, not a bureaucrat sitting in Delhi.
I also recall reading in Verma about the SEZ's special economic zones. That seems to fit in perfectly here.
Yes, that was a crucial scheme to boost exports. The logic there was very pragmatic. The government realized, okay, we can't fix the infrastructure, the power grid, and the complex tax laws for the whole of India overnight. It's too big.
So let's create bubbles.
Exactly. Small enclaves, special economic zones where the rules are entirely different. In an SEZ, you get tax holidays, you get world-class infrastructure, uninterrupted power, and simplified labor laws.
There's a catch.
The catch is you have to be exporting your output. You are producing for the world, not the domestic market. It was essentially like creating mini Singapores inside India.
It's like a VIP section for exporters. I like that. But the move that always confuses people, the one that feels counterintuitive when you first read about it, is devaluation.
Ah, yes, the deliberate lowering of the rupee's value. This is a concept that trips up a lot of students when they first encounter it.
Right, because in 1991, the government deliberately made the rupee weaker against the dollar. Now, if I am just a common citizen, I want my currency to be strong. I want my rupee to buy more stuff. Why on earth would the government want to make it weaker?
It's a classic crisis maneuver. You have to stop looking at it from the perspective of an Indian buying things and look at it from the perspective of a foreigner buying Indian goods. Let's do the math simply.
Okay, let's do it.
Suppose the exchange rate is $1 equals 20 rupees. A foreign buyer with $1 can buy 20 rupees worth of Indian cotton.
Okay, I'm with you. $1 buys 20 rupees of stuff.
Now the government devalues the rupee. The new rate is $1 equals 30 rupees.
Right.
That same foreign buyer with that same $1 bill can now buy 30 rupees worth of Indian cotton.
So Indian cotton just became 50% cheaper for the international buyer without the Indian farmer actually having to lower his price.
Exactly. It's a massive on-sale sign for the global market. This severely boosts what economists call export competitiveness. In a crisis like 1991, you need to earn dollars fast to pay your debts. And the only sustainable way to earn dollars is to export.
And devaluation makes your exports incredibly attractive.
It does. Now it hurts imports because buying foreign oil suddenly becomes much more expensive in rupee terms, but it saves the export sector, which brings in the vital foreign exchange.
So the overarching takeaway from the 1991 trade reforms is basically shifting the entire state machinery from preventing foreign trade to facilitating it.
That is the core philosophy. But here is the catch. You cannot run a liberal open economy with draconian closed economy laws.
Right.
You can't invite foreign investors into the country, say we are open for business, and then threaten them with jail time if they make a tiny paperwork error regarding their currency.
That brings us to the massive legal transition in Section 2, the shift from FERA to FEMA.
A monumental shift.
I always thought FERA sounded like a wild animal, a wolf or something feral.
It's certainly a bit like one. FERA was the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1973. The key word there is regulation.
And the vibe was pure policing, right?
It was aggressive, paranoid policing. The underlying philosophy of FERA was that foreign exchange is a strictly scarce resource. It belongs to the nation, not to the individual who earned it. It must be hoarded, rationed, and guarded.
And the presumption?
The presumption of the law was that if you were dealing in dollars, you were probably up to no good. You were guilty until proven innocent.
That creates a terrible culture of fear.
It creates a culture of paralysis. And here is the kicker. The part that absolutely terrified businesses' violations under FERA were criminal offenses.
We are talking actual prison time.
Jail time. Non-bailable warrants. If you messed up your reporting on a foreign transaction, or if you kept $20 from a trip abroad without declaring it to the RBI, you weren't just fined. You could be actively prosecuted as a criminal.
Imagine running a complex global business with that sword hanging over your neck every single day.
It would kill the entrepreneurial spirit completely. Who would want to risk jail just to sell a product abroad or bring in foreign capital?
Exactly.
And it did kill it. Foreign companies were also heavily restricted. They were often kept to a maximum of 40% equity in Indian ventures. They couldn't even own a majority of their own companies here.
That's why they were legally labeled FERA companies, right?
Yes, and they were watched like hawks. IBM and Coca-Cola actually packed up and left India during this period because the regulations were just too stifling. They essentially said, we can't work like this, we are out.
So 1991 happens, the economy opens up. FERA is now completely incompatible with this new open reality.
It was a dinosaur in the age of the internet. So the government repealed it and introduced FEMA in 1999, the Foreign Exchange Management Act. Notice the subtle but really profound change in the name.
From regulation to management, it sounds so much softer, more professional.
It's much more pragmatic. The philosophy shifted entirely. Foreign exchange is no longer viewed as a scarce national resource to be aggressively hoarded. It is viewed as an asset to be managed. It is a tool to facilitate trade and growth.
And the legal consequence. Does the threat of jail still exist under FEMA?
This is the most critical difference for your listeners to grasp, especially for the exams. Under FEMA, violations are civil offenses.
So monetary penalties, fines.
Right. If you violate a rule, say you remit more money than allowed, or you invest in a sector you pay a penalty, a fine. As long as you pay the penalty, you are not going to prison. It completely decriminalized the use of foreign currency.
That must have been a huge sigh of relief for the corporate sector. It turns what used to be a crime into a compliance issue.
Massive relief. Now, that doesn't mean there's zero oversight. It introduced the Enforcement Directorate, the ED, which we hear about in the news constantly today. Yeah. Their job under FEMA is the investigation and enforcement of these civil rules. But the underlying tone of the act is facilitation. The RBI shifted from being a dictator of rates to a manager of forex.
So FEMA basically stands on three pillars, right?
Yes. First, rupee convertibility, making it easier to swap currencies. Second, borrowing freedoms, allowing Indian companies to get loans abroad. And third, the role of RBI managing the volatility rather than policing every single dollar.
Okay, you mentioned convertibility. This is a huge topic. It takes up a significant chunk of Sanjeev Verma's book, and Vivek Singh writes about it with a lot of detail and nuance.
It's a foundational concept.
But before we define it, we need to understand the balance of payments. Vivek Singh makes a really big deal about defining this clearly before moving on. Why is he so pedantic about it?
Because you literally cannot understand convertibility if you don't fully grasp the balance of payments, or BOP. It's like trying to understand a credit card statement without knowing the difference between your income and your debt. You will just get lost.
So lay it out for us. What is the balance of payments?
Think of the BOP as the country's master ledger. It is the systematic record of all economic transactions between residents of India and the rest of the world over a specific period, usually a year. Everything goes in there. Every single dollar that enters India and every dollar that leaves India is recorded in this master ledger.
And it has two main pockets or accounts.
Correct. The current account and the capital account. The distinction between these two is the single most important concept in international economics. If you get this, you get everything else we're talking about.
Okay, let's break them down carefully. Start with the current account.
Think of the current account as your monthly income and expenditure statement. It tracks transactions that do not alter your long-term assets or liabilities.
Okay.
It's entirely about the now. It covers trade in goods, trade in services, and transfers.
Give me some concrete, everyday examples.
Okay. You are a tech firm in Bangalore, and you sell a software service to a client in New York that's an export. Money comes in. That's current account.
Makes sense.
You buy crude oil from Saudi Arabia to refine into petrol in India. That's an import. Money goes out. That's also current account.
What about when my uncle sends money home from Dubai to his family in Kerala? He's not buying or selling a good.
That is called a remittance or a transfer. That is also current account because it's essentially income for the family receiving it, but they don't owe the uncle anything back. It doesn't create a long-term debt or an asset. It's just a flow of money.
Okay, so it's trade services and transfers, spending and earning. Then what is the capital account?
The capital account is like your personal balance sheet. It tracks transactions that fundamentally change your asset or liability status. It's about investing and borrowing.
So like buying a house.
Exactly. If a U.S. company buys a factory in India, that's foreign direct investment or FDI, they now own a physical asset in India. That is a capital account transaction.
Okay.
If an Indian company like Tata Motors takes a massive loan from a bank in London, they now have a liability, a debt they have to pay back over years. That is capital account.
Got it. So current is flow of goods and services. Capital is flow of ownership and debt.
Perfect analogy.
Uh-huh.
And this leads us directly into the concept of convertibility. Because the rules for converting rupees to dollars are very, very different depending on which of these two accounts you're actually dealing with.
Section 4, Rupee convertibility, the core debate. Sanjeev Verma devotes a lot of space to this. In simple English, what is convertibility?
Simply put, convertibility is the freedom to convert your domestic currency, the rupee, into foreign currency, like the dollar and vice versa, for any purpose, without the government stepping in and saying no.
It basically means the currency is market acceptable.
Yes. If I have 1 billion rupees, can I just walk into a bank and get the equivalent in dollars? If the answer is yes for absolutely everything, you are fully convertible.
But we aren't fully convertible, are we? We are a hybrid system.
We are a hybrid. And this is exactly where that distinction between current and capital accounts becomes the star of the show. India has full current account convertibility, meaning if you need dollars for trade purposes, importing shoes, traveling abroad for tourism, sending money for your kids' university education in the U.S., paying interest on the loan, you can get them. The government facilitates this. We actually achieved this back in August 1994 when we accepted Article 8 of the IMF. It was a huge declaration to the world saying we are open for business.
Now, I know there are limits, right? Like the Liberalized Remittance Scheme or LRS, where an individual can only send up to $250,000 a year. But broadly, the principle for trade is freedom.
Correct. The limits like LRS are high enough that for 99% of individuals and businesses, it feels fully convertible. Unless you're trying to buy a private island, you probably won't hit the limit.
But the capital account is a different story entirely.
A very different story. India has only partial capital account convertibility. We are not fully convertible here.
So why the hesitation? I mean, if we trust the market for trade and imports, why not for assets? Why can't I just convert all my savings into dollars and buy a penthouse in Manhattan tomorrow without asking anyone?
Fear. Specifically, the deep-seated fear of capital flight. Imagine we had full capital account convertibility tomorrow. It would mean anyone, foreign investors, massive corporations, or Indian citizens, could convert billions of rupees into dollars instantly and move them out of the country.
Okay.
Now imagine a panic. A rumor spreads that the Indian economy is shaky. Or maybe the U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates, making American bonds much more attractive than Indian ones. If you have full convertibility, foreign investors and even Indian citizens could dump the rupee, buy dollars, and flee overnight.
It would act like a run on the bank, but for the entire country's economy.
Exactly. It would drain our foreign exchange reserves in hours. It would completely crash the currency value. Sanjeev Verma specifically points to the East Asian crisis of 1997 as the cautionary tale here.
Tell us about that, because that really shaped RBI policy.
It did. Countries like Thailand, Indonesia, and South Korea had full capital account convertibility. They actually thought it was a badge of honor, a sign of a mature economy. But when market sentiment turned sour in 1997, money rushed out so incredibly fast, their economies effectively collapsed. Banks failed, businesses shut down, and their currency values just evaporated.
And India survived that crisis.
We survived it mainly because we had controls. We had gates on the capital account. We didn't allow money to just sprint out of the door. The rupee stayed relatively stable because the exit door was very narrow. The RBI essentially said you can leave, but you have to leave slowly and systematically.
So are we ever going to have full convertibility? Or is this just a permanent state of maybe later?
There's a roadmap. The RBI actually set up the Terraport Committee twice, actually once in 1997 and again in 2006, to map out a road to full convertibility. But they laid down very strict preconditions. They essentially said, don't do this unless your house is in perfect order.
What does an order mean in macroeconomic terms?
3 big things, according to Terraport. 1, fiscal deficit must be very low. The government shouldn't be overspending and borrowing recklessly. 2, inflation must be low and heavily controlled. 3, the banking system must be robust with low NPAs, non-performing assets.
Basically, you need an economy made of steel before you open the floodgates. Because if your banks are weak with high NPAs and you open the capital account, a sudden outflow of money could easily topple the banks.
Exactly. And while we have made significant progress, like the fully accessible route or FIR, which allows foreign investment in certain government securities without limits, we still firmly retain the right to control flows during extreme volatility. We are cautious. We vastly prefer stability over absolute financial freedom.
Speaking of cautious, let's talk about exams for a second. There was a UPSC question in 2015 about this exact topic.
Yes, the question was straight from the textbook, but it required conceptual clarity. It asked convertibility of rupee implies, and the answer was simply freely permitting the conversion of rupee to other currencies and vice versa.
It sounds so simple.
It sounds simple, but as we've just discussed, the actual application of that definition varies wildly depending on whether you were talking about buying a shirt, which is current, or buying a factory, which is capital. You need to know the layers.
It's all about the nuance. Okay, let's shift gears to the mechanics of price. Section 5, exchange rate determination. How do we actually decide that $1 equals, say, 83 rupees?
This is where Vivek Singh's explanations are absolute gold. He strips away all the noise.
Because we used to have a fixed rate, right? The government just said $1 is 10 rupees, and that was that.
Post-independence, yes.
Yes.
The rupee was pegged to the pound initially, and later the dollar. The RBI decided the rate. If the market fundamentals changed, the RBI just ignored it until the pressure became absolutely too high, and then they were forced to announce a massive, sudden devaluation. It was rigid and very jerky.
Then came 1992 and something called LURMS.
The Liberalized Exchange Rate Management System. It was a transition phase, a dual rate system. Imagine a world where there are literally two legal prices for the dollar. 40% of dollars earned by exporters had to be exchanged at a low, artificially set government rate.
Why? Why penalize the exporter?
It subsidized essential imports like oil and fertilizer. The government bought cheap dollars from exporters to buy cheap oil for the country. The remaining 60% of their dollars could be exchanged at the actual market rate.
It sounds incredibly messy.
It was messy. It acted as an implicit tax on exporters, but as a necessary bridge. By 1993, we finally moved to a market-determined system.
Supply and demand.
Yes. If global investors want more rupees to buy Indian stocks or goods, the price of the rupee goes up. If Indians are selling rupees to buy iPhones or invest in the U.S. stock market, the price goes down.
But wait. The host in me has to ask, if it's purely market-determined, why is the RBI constantly in the news buying and selling billions of dollars? That doesn't sound like a free market at all.
You've hit on the key term there. We don't have a free float like the US dollar or the euro. We have a managed float. It's sometimes affectionately called a dirty float.
Dirty float, I like that. It sounds illicit.
It just means the RBI lets the market set the broad, long-term trend. They don't fight the fundamental direction.
Yeah.
If the rupee needs to weaken because our inflation is higher than the U.S., they let it weaken. But they intervene heavily to prevent extreme day-to-day volatility. They act as the shock absorbers.
Give me a scenario of how this works.
Scenario A, the rupee is crashing. Maybe there is a war breaking out in Europe, oil prices spike globally, and everyone is panic selling rupees to buy dollars for safety. The rupee is depreciating way too fast.
Okay.
The RBI steps in and sells dollars from its massive foreign exchange reserves into the market.
They flood the market with dollars to satisfy the panic demand.
Exactly. They drastically increase the supply of dollars to prop up the rupee's value and calm the panic. Now, scenario B. The rupee is getting too strong. Maybe huge foreign investment is flooding in because India is seen as the next big growth story.
But why is a strong rupee bad? Don't we inherently want a strong, powerful currency?
Remember our first section. Export competitiveness. If the rupee becomes too strong, say $1 equals 50 rupees, our exports suddenly become very expensive for the rest of the world. Our vital IT sector and textile exporters suffer massive losses.
Oh, right.
So the RDI steps in and buys the incoming dollars to deliberately keep the rupee from appreciating too much.
But there is a major catch here, right? Vivek Singh talks about sterilization. This sounds medical. What is it?
It is a high-concept monetary topic, but it's brilliant. Think about the mechanics. When the RBI buys billions of dollars from the market to stop the rupee from appreciating, what do they give the market in return?
They give rupees.
They print or release rupees. So suddenly the Indian domestic market is flooded with fresh, newly created rupees. Too much money chasing the same amount of goods leads to what?
Inflation.
Bingo. So the RBI solves one problem, currency appreciation, hurting exports. But in doing so, they create another problem, domestic inflation. To fix this secondary problem, they perform sterilization. They suck that excess liquidity right back out.
How do you just suck money out of an entire economy?
They sell government securities bonds to the commercial banks. The banks give the RBI those extra rupees to buy the bonds. The RBI takes those rupees and essentially locks them away in their vault.
Wow. So they injected rupees to buy dollars, then almost immediately suck the rupees back out by selling bonds.
Precisely. They neutralized or sterilized the inflationary impact of their forex intervention. It's an incredibly delicate balancing act. It shows how deeply interconnected everything is, foreign exchange inflation and domestic banking liquidity.
And while we are on technical terms that confuse people, let's clarify near versus rear. These sound like twins, but Vivek Singh says one is much more important than the other.
Nominal effective exchange rate, or near, and real effective exchange rate, rear. Near is just the weighted average of the rupee against a basket of currencies of our major trading partners, dollar, euro, yen, yuan. It tells you broadly how the rupee is moving.
And rear.
Rear is the near mathematically adjusted for inflation differences between India and those countries. This is the one that really matters for true competitiveness.
Why does adjusting for inflation matter so much?
Because inflation eats into your competitiveness. If inflation in India is 6% and in the US it's only 2%, our actual cost of production is rising much faster. Even if the nominal exchange rate stays exactly the same on screen, our goods are becoming more expensive to make in real terms. Rear captures that hidden cost. If rear is above 100, the rupee is considered overvalued. It means our exports are fundamentally becoming uncompetitive, and the currency might need to depreciate to correct it.
So rear is the truth teller. It tells you the real purchasing power story.
It is the absolute true measure of export competitiveness. Yes.
Okay, let's move to Section 6. Borrowing money globally. External commercial borrowings, or ECBs.
This refers to Indian companies borrowing money from foreign sources like foreign banks or international bond markets in foreign currency, usually dollars or euros.
Why would a company in Mumbai go through the complex hassle of borrowing from a bank in London? Is it just for prestige?
No, it's purely for profit. It's about interest rate arbitrage. Interest rates in developed economies like the US, Europe, or Japan have historically been much, much lower than in India.
So I can borrow at maybe 4% in London versus 10% in Mumbai.
Exactly. It lowers your overall cost of capital significantly. If you are building a massive billion-dollar infrastructure project, a 6% difference in interest is massive savings. That's the incentive.
But there's no free lunch in economics.
There never is. The massive risk here is currency risk. Let's do the math again. You borrow $100. Let's say today $1 is 50 rupees. Your debt on your Indian books is 5,000 rupees. You are happy. Suddenly the rupee crashes. $1 becomes 80 rupees. You still owe that London bank $100. They don't care about the rupee at all. But now, to buy that $100 to pay them back, you need 8,000 rupees.
My debt just jumped from 5,000 rupees to 8,000 rupees without me borrowing a single extra penny.
Exactly. And you still have to pay the interest on top of that. This balance sheet shock absolutely destroys companies. We saw this happen to many Indian corporates in 2008 and 2013 when the rupee slid. That's why the RBI has strict limits. However, there's an automatic route under FEMA where companies can borrow up to a certain limit, currently around $750 million per year, without needing specific RBI approval, provided it's for productive sectors like infrastructure.
Is there a way to borrow abroad without taking on this massive currency risk?
Yes. Enter the Masala bond.
I love the name. It's so distinctly Indian.
It was named by the IFC, an arm of the World Bank, specifically to evoke Indian culture. Very similar to dim sum bonds for China or samurai bonds for Japan. A Masala bond is a bond issued outside India, say, on the London Stock Exchange, but it is importantly denominated in rupees.
Wait, explain the mechanics of that.
I'm an Indian company. I issue a bond in London for 10 million rupees. The foreign investor gives me the equivalent dollars today to buy the bond, but the legal contract says I owe you 10 million rupees plus interest.
So if the rupee crashes,
The foreign investor gets fewer dollars back when I repay them those 10 million rupees. The investor takes the currency risk, not the Indian borrower.
that is brilliant for the Indian company. You get foreign money, but you don't lose sleep over the exchange rate crashing. But why would a foreigner take that risk? Are they just being charitable?
They are being greedy. It's the interest rates again. The Indian company offers a significantly higher interest rate on the Masala bond than the foreign investor could ever get in the US or UK markets. The investor is basically betting that the high interest earned will more than offset any potential rupee depreciation over the bond's life.
High risk, high reward for them. Safety for us.
Exactly. And there was a UPSC PYQ on this too in 2016. It asked specifically about IFC Masala bonds. The key to getting the answer right was understanding they are rupee-denominated debt instruments, not dollar-denominated. That one detail changes the entire risk profile.
It all connects so perfectly. Okay, Section 7, foreign investment. We hear FDI and FPI all the time on the news. Sanjeev Verma and Vivek Singh both make a very sharp distinction between the two.
The best and easiest analogy to remember here is marriage versus dating.
Okay, break it down.
Foreign direct investment, or FDI, is the marriage. It is a long-term commitment. The foreign investor buys a large stake in an Indian company, usually defined as more than 10% equity. They want a seat on the board of directors. They want to actively manage the company. They bring proprietary technology expertise, and they literally build physical factories.
They are in it for the long haul.
Yes. If the Indian stock market dips next week, they aren't going to sell their physical car factory and leave. You can't liquidate a factory in a day. It provides massive stability to our balance of payments.
And FPI, foreign portfolio investment.
FPI is dating, sometimes very casual dating. It's short-term. Foreign funds buy small amounts of shares, less than 10% equity. Their interest isn't running the company at all. It's purely capital gains. They want the stock price to go up so they can sell and book a profit.
And if the market dips?
They sell their digital shares and leave instantly. We call this hot money. It is extremely volatile. If the U.S. Fed raises rates, making U.S. assets safer, FPI flows out of India and back to the U.S. in seconds. That's exactly why the government loves FDI, but watches FPI with a bit of anxiety. FPI can trigger a sudden market crash. FDI actually builds nations.
And generally, our policy stance is to welcome both.
Yes, largely through the automatic route now. We need the capital to grow. But there are still restrictions on FDI in sensitive sectors. Atomic energy is obviously a no-go, gambling is banned, and multi-brand retail like a Walmart selling directly to consumers is still a very sensitive topic with restrictions.
Right. It's a complex balance. Now looking to the future. Section 8, internationalization of the rupee. We keep hearing about trading with Russia in rupees or signing agreements with the UAE.
This is the new economic frontier for India. Internationalization means actively pushing the rupee to be used for trade between other countries or settling India's own massive import bills directly in rupees instead of dollars.
Why do we want this so badly now?
It's about sovereignty and safety. If we can pay for our oil in rupees, we don't need to hoard it is. But as the Indian economy grows to $5 trillion and beyond, the structural pressure to internationalize will only grow. You can't realistically be a global economic superpower with a currency that nobody else uses.
So let's wrap this up. We have come a very long way from the FERA era at that Bombay airport.
We truly have. We went from policing to management, from FERA's jail threats to FEMA's civil penalties. We moved from a rigid fixed exchange rate to a sophisticated managed float where the RBI plays referee. We opened our current account fully but smartly kept the gates guarded on the capital account.
It's really a journey of maturing as a nation. We stopped fearing foreign money and started learning how to strategically use it. We finally realized that foreign exchange is a tool for growth, not an inherent threat to our sovereignty.
Precisely. That is the perfect summary.
But here's a provocative thought for you to end on. Sanjeev Verma suggests that full convertibility is inevitable but delayed. But I look at the financial world today, Bitcoin defies stablecoins. People are moving billions in value across borders in seconds, completely bypassing traditional banks and central authorities.
Right. In that kind of decentralized world, does the rigid distinction between current and capital accounts even matter anymore? If I can move value globally on a blockchain instantly, can the RBI really manage the float forever? Or is technology just going to force the absolute openness that policy is still hesitant to grant?
That is the billion-dollar question. Technology might make capital controls entirely obsolete before we even officially decide to remove them. It's a whole new frontier of challenges for the next generation of economists.
A challenge for a future deep dives, perhaps.
All right.
All right, listeners, that's a wrap on trade reforms and Forex management. This was a really dense one, but we hope it clarified the why behind the what.
Indeed, it's a vital topic.
A final reminder, please check the public Telegram channel for the free notes and those PYQ practice sheets derived from today's deep dive. If you want to master this topic for your UPSC exams, you absolutely need to practice those questions.
And if you want the premium experience, the highly organized notes, the model mains, answers to the full archive of videos, join the private library. Just DM on the public channel. If this deep dive helped you understand the economy better, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It keeps us independent, ad-free, and allows us to do this level of research. And please don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube and share your valuable comments down below.
Keep learning, keep questioning everything.
We will see you in the next deep dive.